If you wanted to send a message to someone that only they should read or tell something secret to someone, what would you do? For most people, the answer is just start a private chat with that person, type in a message, and press the send button. But we didn't have access to this strong encryption for most of human history, unfortunately. And what makes this history of secret communications so interesting is that when you look back to the origins of encryption, you can't help but go, oh, that's cute. But a 10-year-old can break that now. Now, people have been trying to communicate secretly, well, since people have been communicating. And for good reason. It's not exactly optimal for the enemy to find out the contents of top secret military documents or that gossipy friend who can't keep his mouth shut to find out about that embarrassing thing that happened in front of Crush. Both of these are situations of equal gravity, obviously. And where there are people trying to hide information, there are always people trying to uncover it. So throughout human history, there has been this need for secret communications and an equally motivated need of an adversary to find out the contents of those secret communications, which has led to the development of some really strong encryption techniques. So strong that with our current computers, it will take about 300 trillion years to break them. Just a side note, in about a few billion years or so, the sun will become so hot that all life on Earth will cease to exist. So, I'd say that's pretty secure. And while encryption techniques that outlast the lifetime of the Earth aren't probably the easiest to think of off the top of your head, ancient encryption techniques are actually pretty intuitive. Consider something like this. Let's say that you want to talk to a friend through letters and you don't want anyone other than your friend to know what you've written in those letters. So you can't just write down your message and send the letter, because the thing is, you can't trust anyone. Anyone in the postal chain could be bribed by a supervillain, to read all the contents of your letters, and if that happens, it means your entire mission will be jeopardized. So you must meet up with your friend once before this exchange of letters starts and come up with a way to scramble your messages so that even if someone other than you two reads the letters, they can't understand anything. Pause the video now to give this a go. Now, there are two main ways of scrambling up messages that people usually come up with. One is substituting letters by some other letters or symbols to scramble the message, and then doing a reverse substitution to get back the original message, also known as a substitution cipher. And two, jumbling up the letters in certain specific reversible ways, called transposition ciphers. We'll be focusing on breaking substitution ciphers in this video because that's what I decided. Deal with it. Substitution ciphers are some of the oldest ciphers in the world. They can be found in Egyptian heliographs. They were used by the Romans. In fact, there's a special cipher called the Caesar cipher that Julius Caesar, yes, the A2 Brutus guy, came up with, which is just a special kind of substitution cipher. Now, substitution ciphers come in two flavors. One, monoalphabetic substitution ciphers or simple substitution ciphers, which is the one I just mentioned. We substitute one letter by another, and we do that for all the letters. And two, polyalphabetic substitution ciphers, in which one letter is substituted by multiple other letters or symbols. Which letter substituted may be determined by the position of the letter in the message or some other rule. And why anyone would do that? Well, I'll explain that in a little while. Now, in any cipher, we have this key that has to scramble and unscramble the messages, which is kind of like locking and unlocking the message to the outside world. So the key must be kept secret, and only those who are supposed to read the messages should have access to it. In a substitution cipher, the key will be the mapping of which letter stands for which. If the key gets leaked, we're screwed. Now, looking at keys alone, the substitution cipher looks very secure. The total number of ways in which we can define the key is 26 factorial, which is 26 times 25 times 4, and so on till 1, which is 403. Septillion, 291, sextillion, 461, quintillion, 126 quadrillion, 605 trillion, 635 billion, and 584 million keys. If you wanted to try each key one by one, even if you were to check one key per second, which is insanely fast, it will take you on average 12 quintillion, 788 quadrillion, 288 trillion, 341 billion, 153 million, 146,740 years to find the correct one. Again, in a few billion years or so, no life on Earth. So, yeah. And it's actually very easy to see how we come up with this number. When we define a key, A must be substituted by some letter. We have 26 letters, so we have 26 choices. Let's say we select L. Now, when we define a mapping for B, we can't select L because that's already used for A, and repeated mappings kind of make things a little confusing. Let's say both A and N would map to J. Anna would be encrypted as GGGG, which, while fun to pronounce, isn't really that helpful because we don't know which J stands for A and which J stands for N. So we're just as likely to decrypt it as Anna as we're likely to decrypt it as Nana or Na or Ah. Coming back to our key, now that we can't select L from B, we have 25 choices left. And then for C, 24, for D, 23, and so on till Z, we will have just one choice left. So the total number of ways to make a key is 26 times 25 times 4, and so on till 1. Now it would seem that this huge number of possible keys would make the cipher pretty secure because guessing the right one is like finding a needle in a haystack. A very, very big haystack. But that's actually not the case. It is extremely easy to break the cipher. So easy that, like the title says, we can do it for fun. So let's play a game. We'll be playing Hangman, which most of you would have played. Basically, you have to guess a word or a phrase, given some context, and you've like 6 tries. Though I have slightly modified the game. The context may or may not be given, and the vowels will be pre-filled in the dashes. Why I've modified it will make sense in a little while.
Check the mic and make sure it sound right, boys.
T F S N O N N M. Okay, gemstone.
Meanwhile,
दादी क्या अभी कटी हो रहा था नहीं एस कर दे और आखिर में क्या आएगा आएगा
मेरे को पता है ना किसमें आएगा
ओह ठीक है के ओह कीस्टोन नहीं है क्या वो हाँ
नहीं
Oh, ठीक है. Okay, a ruby is a red gemstone.
Nice.
C, B. Is it bucks? The last one. L, M.
meanwhile,
Or H. I'm sure spelling सही है. Third word. Okay.
मेरे को डाउट हो गया एकदम से
मेरे को भी समझ नहीं आ रहा थर्ड वर्ड क्या है मैं सुना नहीं वाला
नॉट पॉसिबल
ओह ठीक है भाई यार क्या है ये
सलमान खान ने किसको मारा था
डीएस ओह वेरी गुड बक्स यार एस पी आर एन भी कर देना शॉर्ट क्या होता है भाई भाई कॉन्टेक्स्ट आगे लिख लैंग्वेज भी तो बता डॉस पेरेंट साउंड स्टूपा एल एम एफ जे क्यू करते हैं मत कर ठीक है यार
meanwhile,
boy first word is boy
दोनों कर दो
हाँ over confidence S N L R T D C
ये एक्चुअली फ्रेंच है
okay
सॉरी Now we make some interesting observations in Hangman. 1. Context is very important and greatly reduces the number of tries it takes to guess the phrase. And 2, and I know I played a little dirty here, but stay with me. If you don't know the language the phrase is in, it is next to impossible to guess it. And I know substitution ciphers to hangman seems like a long jump, but it actually isn't. You see, instead of these blanks, if we had random letters arranged into words that made no sense, but following one simple rule, that if in the original phrase the same letter filled two blanks, the random letters in those places would be the same. And this exchange kind of makes sense because whenever you correctly guess a letter in Hangman, all the blanks in which that letter would be are filled in. And with that, we essentially have a substitution cipher. We have a string of letters that stand for some other letters, and if you substitute them, we get the original phrase. Same thing. Although there were pre-filled letters in Hangman, which we don't really have in the cipher. So the comparison doesn't really hold, right? Wrong, it does. You see, fine, we don't really have pre-filled letters, but it is very easy to determine what some of the letters stand for. Not necessarily the vowels, but a different small set of letters. Here, I've written a simple program that takes in some text, calculates the number of times each letter occurs in that text, and plots it out in a bar graph. There's also this website I found that does the same thing if you want to try this out for yourself. Link in the description. Now we want to start with a random piece of text. Fortunately, there's this nice website that gives us exactly what we want. I open a random article, copy its contents into my program, and generate a graph. And nothing really pops out until we try this for a few more articles. We see that there's always this high peak at E, T, A, and O, and there's almost nothing on letters like J, Q, X, and Z. And we see that for almost every article we input into our program. And moreover, if we start combining the contents of various articles into a single piece of text, we see that this graph starts to stabilize. This is because the English language has a fingerprint. And that fingerprint is the frequency distribution of all letters in the language, which is essentially just the percentage of time a letter is likely to occur in a piece of text on average. The fingerprint that we just saw. And these are the 12 most frequently occurring letters in a typical English language text in that order. So we know that since E occurs most frequently in English, in an encrypted piece of text, the letter that occurs most frequently is most likely to be E. Similarly, the second most frequently occurring letter is most likely to be T, the third most frequent A, then O, and so on. And even though after the first few most frequent letters, the graph starts to flatten a bit, which makes it a little bit difficult to guess further letters in this way, we have statistics on the frequency of letter pairs called bigrams and triplets called trigrams, and so on. So not only do we know the most common letters, we know the most common pairs of letters, the most common repeats, the most common triplets, and so on. So if the pair LJ occurs most frequently in the encrypted message, we can be fairly certain that L stands for T and J stands for H. So there you go. We have our pseudo pre-filled letters. And now you'll understand why I had that one French phrase in my Hangman games. You see, these most frequent letters we found are based on the fingerprint of the English language. And the more comfortable we are with the language, the more we internalize this fingerprint. French will obviously have its own fingerprint and its own frequency distribution for bigrams and trigrams. So how comfortable you are with the language plays into how easy it is to decrypt a cipher in that language. So even though we don't really have pre-filled letters, finding them is easier than finding Waldo and where's Waldo because that dude knows how to hide. Which brings us to the last piece of the puzzle, the context. You see, the context is quite often present. If we intercept a message in a battlefield, we know there are going to be words like attack, dawn, north, which makes it easier to guess the message. And that's it. With the information of what some of the letters stand for and the context of the conversation, substitution ciphers are just hangman games. And just by playing around a little bit, we can guess most messages just like we guess the phrases in Hangman. And in fact, I'd say that substitution ciphers are easier to break because typically you'd have a large amount of cipher text to analyze and find patterns from, and you're not limited to just 6 tries like in the game. Of course, not all ancient encryption is just simple substitution ciphers. Remember polyalphabetic ciphers where multiple characters may stand for the same letter? Well, if you calculate the character frequencies in a polyalphabetic cipher, you'll find a much flatter graph, a less visible fingerprint. In fact, the Enigma machine used by the Germans in World War II was just a very, very complex polyalphabetic cipher. It took almost an year by the Polish Cipher Bureau to figure out the workings of a simpler Enigma, and still it took the British months to make the bomb, the machine that finally cracked the Enigma code. And that was in 1941. We have made enormous progress since then. The encryption we have today is still not perfect. With quantum computers becoming better day by day, we still have a work cut out for us. But it is interesting to see that what used to be a mechanism to protect information for our ancestors is now merely a game for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.